The alarm buzzed at 6:30 a.m., just like it did every other morning. Daniel Carter groaned, slamming his hand onto the snooze button before forcing himself out of bed. Another Monday, another long day at the office. He went through the motions, brushing his teeth, making coffee, checking his phone for news updates. A few odd headlines caught his attention. Violent riots in downtown, police struggle to control the situation. Unidentified virus spreading rapidly, authorities urge caution. Daniel skimmed the articles but didn't think much of it. The world was always in chaos somewhere, but it had never directly affected him. He grabbed his coat, locked his apartment, and headed out into the city. The streets of downtown were alive as usual, horns honked, people rushed to work, and vendors set up their stalls. Inside Westbridge Corp., where Daniel worked as a project manager, his colleagues greeted him with the usual small talk. "Did you see the news?" asked Marcus, his closest friend at work. "Some crazy stuff happening a few blocks away. People are saying it's some kind of virus." Daniel shrugged. "Probably just another case of the flu. The media loves to exaggerate things." But as the morning progressed, the atmosphere in the office grew tense. More news reports surfaced, unconfirmed videos showing people attacking each other like rabid animals. Then came the sirens. By lunchtime, Daniel stepped outside to grab a coffee, but something felt off. The streets were quieter than usual. A woman stood on the sidewalk, staring at something in the distance. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "Oh my God." Daniel followed her gaze, and his stomach turned to ice. A man was sprinting down the street, blood smeared across his face. He tackled another pedestrian, biting into their shoulder like a wild animal. The victim's screams echoed through the street, sending onlookers into a panic. More people appeared, running, screaming, shoving each other aside. The infected were multiplying. The police arrived, guns drawn, shouting orders for people to stay back. But the chaos was spreading too fast. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run. He turned and bolted back toward the office, slamming into Marcus on the way. "What the hell is going on?" Marcus panted. "No idea," Daniel gasped. "But we need to get inside now." Behind them, the sounds of gunfire erupted. Back in the office, panic had already set in. Employees gathered by the windows, watching the nightmare unfold outside. The building's security tried to lock the doors, but it was already too late. Someone had brought the infection inside. A woman in accounting collapsed to the ground, convulsing violently. Gasps filled the room as she suddenly jerked upright, her eyes bloodshot, her skin pale. Then she lunged. Screams filled the air as the first of many turned inside the building. Daniel's nightmare had just begun. Screams tore through the office as chaos erupted. The woman from accounting, Linda, had been the first to collapse, but she wasn't the last. More people started convulsing, clutching their heads, and collapsing onto the floor. And then, just like Linda, they rose again, eyes vacant, jaws snapping, hungry for flesh. Daniel's heart pounded as he grabbed Marcus's arm. "We have to move. Now." Panic spread like wildfire. Employees shoved past each other, trying to reach the exits, but the infected were faster. Linda pounced on Eric, a young intern, sinking her teeth deep into his throat. Blood sprayed across the white office walls as Eric's screams turned into wet gurgles. Bang! A security guard fired his gun, hitting Linda in the shoulder. But she didn't stop. She barely flinched before lunging at him next, dragging him to the ground. Daniel and Marcus stumbled backward, their minds struggling to process what they were seeing. "This isn't real," Marcus whispered. "This can't be real." But it was. Nowhere to run. The office had turned into a death trap. The main exit was overrun with people desperately trying to escape, and the stairwells were jammed with bodies, some human, some not. "We need a different way out," Daniel shouted. He spotted a fire escape door near the back of the office. It was their best shot. "Come on." Daniel, Marcus, and a few others, Samantha, Olivia, and Brian, rushed toward it, dodging the chaos around them. But just as they reached the door, another infected employee came barreling toward them. Mr. Collins, their usually quiet supervisor, his face twisted into something monstrous, lunged at Samantha. She screamed as Collins grabbed her, teeth snapping inches from her face. Without thinking, Daniel grabbed a heavy stapler from a nearby desk and slammed it into Collins's head. It barely slowed him down. Marcus reacted faster, grabbing a metal chair and smashing it over Collins's skull. The infected man collapsed, but Daniel knew it wasn't over. "We have to go," Olivia shouted, yanking the fire escape door open. They rushed inside, slamming the door shut behind them. The stairwell was eerily quiet compared to the madness outside. "Where do we go?" Brian panted, his hands shaking. Daniel tried to think. The ground floor was overrun. That much was clear. "The roof," he decided. "We get to the roof and figure things out from there." Marcus nodded. Better than trying to push through that mess downstairs. They started climbing. But with every step, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that things were only going to get worse. The infection spreads. Halfway up, a horrifying realization set in. Samantha, still breathing heavily, had a deep scratch on her arm. Daniel froze. "Samantha, what happened?" She looked down at her arm, her eyes widening. I don't know," she stammered. "I think Collins scratched me when he grabbed me." Marcus paled. What if that's how it spreads?" Silence filled the stairwell. Brian stepped back. "We can't take the risk," he said, his voice shaking. "We saw what happened to those people in the office." Samantha's breathing quickened. No, I'm fine. I feel fine." Daniel's mind raced. He didn't want to believe it, but deep down, he knew they had to be careful. He met Samantha's eyes, searching for any sign of change. Not yet. But how long did it take? "We're not leaving you behind," Daniel finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. "But if you start feeling different, you tell us immediately." Samantha nodded quickly, but her eyes were full of fear. The group continued climbing, but now, there was an unspoken tension between them. Samantha was a ticking time bomb. The first hard decision. They finally reached the rooftop access door, but it was locked. "Shit!" Marcus cursed, trying to yank it open. Brian kicked it, but it wouldn't budge. Then, from below, footsteps. Not just footsteps, growls. Something was coming up the stairwell. Daniel's stomach twisted as he turned back down the stairs. More infected were climbing up. Olivia whimpered. "They followed us." Marcus grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and started slamming it against the door. Come on. The infected were getting closer, at least 5 of them, their bloodied hands reaching for fresh meat. Daniel made a split-second decision. He grabbed a broken metal pipe from the ground and turned to face the monsters. If the door wouldn't open, they would have to fight. He tightened his grip, his heart hammering in his chest. This was only the beginning. The door wouldn't budge. Marcus kept slamming the fire extinguisher against it, but the lock held firm. Olivia was crying, Brian was swearing under his breath, and Samantha was sweating. Was it fear, or was it something worse? Daniel didn't have time to think about it. The growls from below were getting louder. 5 infected were racing up the stairs, their hands clawing at the walls, their faces twisted in unnatural hunger. Daniel gripped the metal pipe in his hands. "We don't have a choice," he muttered. "We have to fight." Marcus turned, his face pale. "Are you serious?" "There's no way out," Daniel said. "Unless you've got a better idea." No one did. First kill, first lesson. The first infected reached them, a man in a torn business suit, his tie soaked in blood. He lunged at Daniel. Daniel swung the pipe with all his strength. Crack, it smashed against the infected's head. The thing stumbled, but didn't fall. It just turned its head and snarled, lunging again. Daniel barely dodged in time. Marcus reacted next. He lifted the fire extinguisher and slammed it down on the infected skull. This time, the head caved in, blood splattering across the stairwell. The thing collapsed, twitched once, then went still. Marcus stood over the body, panting. You have to destroy the brain. No time to process. More were coming. Samantha, her hands shaking, grabbed a crowbar from the ground and swung at the second infected, a woman in a torn office dress with half her face missing. The crowbar connected with her jaw, sending her staggering. Brian finished her off, stabbing a broken mop handle straight into her eye socket. One after another, they fought back. Olivia stabbed. Marcus smashed. Brian kicked. It was over in less than a minute. 5 bodies lay at their feet. For a moment, the group just stood there, breathing heavily, staring at what they had done. Samantha wiped her mouth. I think I'm gonna be sick. Brian shook his head. We don't have time for this. More are coming. They turned back to the rooftop door. The fight had weakened the hinges. Marcus raised the fire extinguisher one last time, bang. The door swung open. They rushed onto the rooftop. A city in hell. The fresh air hit them like a wave, but what they saw took their breath away. The city was gone. Fires raged in the distance. Plumes of black smoke rose into the sky. Helicopters flew overhead, but they weren't rescuing anyone, they were dropping bombs. Gunshots echoed from every direction. And the streets below were swarming. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of the infected roamed the roads, attacking anything that moved. Daniel felt his stomach drop. The world had fallen apart in just a few hours. There's no way out, Olivia whispered. Marcus shook his head. No. We just have to think. Daniel scanned the nearby buildings. There was a fire escape on the next building over. It led down to the alley, not the main streets. Maybe they had a chance. We jump, he said. Brian's eyes widened. Are you crazy? It's not that far, Daniel said. We jump, take the fire escape down, and stick to the alleys. A loud crash interrupted them. The stairwell door, the one they had just escaped through, burst open. More infected poured out, drawn by the noise of their fight. Jump now! Daniel yelled. Escape from the rooftop. One by one, they jumped. Daniel first. Then Marcus. Then Olivia. Brian hesitated for a second too long, and the infected grabbed him. He screamed as their teeth sank into his arms, his neck, his chest. Daniel turned, reaching out. Brian. But it was too late. Brian was already gone. Samantha was the last one left. She locked eyes with Daniel, fear and pain written all over her face. Then she jumped. She hit the rooftop hard, gasping in pain. Marcus pulled her up, but something was wrong. She clutched her scratched arm, her face dripping with sweat. Daniel's stomach twisted. She was getting worse. But there was no time to argue. The fire escape was their only chance. They rushed down, their feet clanging against the metal steps. Infected swarmed the rooftop above, growling and clawing at the edge. As soon as their feet hit the ground, Daniel grabbed Marcus's shoulder. No main roads. We stick to the alleys. Marcus nodded. And then what? Daniel looked up. The city was collapsing. The military was bombing entire blocks to stop the infection. There were no safe zones anymore. He exhaled sharply. Then we survive. Daniel led the group through the narrow, garbage-strewn alleyways, his grip tightening around the blood-stained pipe in his hands. The main streets were a death trap, crawling with the infected. The alleys were their only hope, but even here, danger lurked in every shadow. Marcus walked beside him, keeping an eye on Samantha, who was getting worse by the minute. Her breathing was labored, and sweat dripped down her forehead. The infection was spreading. Olivia trailed behind, her nerves shot after watching Brian get ripped apart. We need a real plan, she whispered. Not just running. We'll find a safe place, Daniel said, though he wasn't sure if such a place even existed anymore. They turned a corner and froze. A deadly encounter. At the far end of the alley, a group of survivors stood blocking their path. 5 men, armed with baseball bats, pipes, and makeshift weapons. Their leader, a muscular man with a scar down his cheek, eyed them like a predator. Well, he smirked. Look what we have here. Daniel's stomach twisted. They weren't friendly. The scarred man stepped forward. You folks look lost. Maybe we can help. His grin was anything but reassuring. We're just passing through, Daniel said cautiously. The man's eyes flicked to Samantha, who was swaying unsteadily, barely able to stand. His smirk widened. She's infected, isn't she? Daniel stepped in front of her. She's fine. The man chuckled. Oh, come on. I know what the infected look like. She's a liability. And you? You're carrying dead weight. He tapped his bat against his palm. Tell you what, I'll make it easy for you. Hand her over, and we let the rest of you walk. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. Olivia sucked in a breath. Daniel's mind raced. If they refused, they'd have to fight. If they agreed, they'd be just as bad as these monsters. Samantha groaned, barely holding herself up. Scarface took a step closer. Clock's ticking. Daniel gripped his pipe tighter. The first betrayal. Before Daniel could react, Marcus did something unexpected. He stepped forward and said, "She's slowing us down." Daniel's eyes widened. "Marcus, what the hell are you doing?" Marcus didn't look at him. He just looked at Scarface. "You're right. She's infected. If we give her to you, you let us go?" Scarface grinned. "See? Someone with a brain." Samantha looked at Marcus, betrayal and terror written all over her face. "Marcus, please." Daniel felt his blood boil. They had survived this far together. And now Marcus was willing to throw Samantha away like she was nothing? Scarface's men stepped forward to grab her. Daniel made his decision. No more mercy. In one motion, Daniel swung his pipe straight into Scarface's knee. The man screamed as he collapsed, his bat clattering to the ground. "Run!" Daniel shouted. Everything exploded into chaos. Marcus hesitated, stunned by Daniel's move. But Olivia didn't. She grabbed Samantha and dragged her away, sprinting toward the opposite alley. Daniel didn't wait, he snatched Scarface's fallen bat and slammed it into another attacker's ribs. Marcus finally snapped out of it and threw a punch at one of the men, knocking him back. But they were outnumbered. More of Scarface's men lunged. Daniel barely dodged a swinging pipe. Another grabbed Marcus and slammed him into a wall. Daniel saw only one way out. The alley's entrance was blocked, but the chain-link fence to their right was climbable. "Marcus!" "The fence!" Daniel shouted. Marcus shoved his attacker away and made a run for it. Daniel swung the bat one last time, cracking Scarface in the jaw, and then bolted. He leapt onto the fence, climbing as fast as he could. Marcus followed. The gang was right behind them, grabbing at their legs, but they jumped over just in time, landing hard on the pavement below. They didn't stop running. A world without trust. They finally caught up with Olivia and Samantha inside a darkened storage building. Daniel bent over, trying to catch his breath. Marcus leaned against a wall, his face unreadable. Samantha was barely conscious, her body trembling. "She's not going to make it," Marcus said coldly. Daniel turned, fury in his eyes. "You tried to trade her for your own survival." Marcus didn't deny it. "We have to think about what's best for us." Daniel stepped closer. "She's one of us." "No," Marcus said. "She's dead weight." The air was thick with tension. For the first time since this nightmare began, Daniel wasn't just afraid of the infected. He was afraid of the people still alive. Because in this new world, trust could get you killed. And he wasn't sure if Marcus was still on their side. The storage building was dark, filled with old shelves, broken crates, and the lingering scent of dust and mildew. Outside, the sounds of the infected echoed through the city, distant gunfire, sirens that would never be answered, and the occasional, haunting scream. Daniel stood near the entrance, gripping the bloodied pipe, his heart still hammering from the fight. He couldn't stop replaying Marcus's betrayal in his mind. Samantha was getting worse, slumped against a stack of crates. Olivia knelt beside her, pressing a hand to her burning forehead. "She's burning up," Olivia whispered. "We need to find her medicine." Marcus sat across from them, his expression unreadable. He hadn't said a word since they escaped Scarface's gang. Daniel exhaled slowly. "They couldn't stay here. We need supplies," he said. "Food, water, and something for Samantha." Olivia nodded. "A pharmacy?" Daniel considered it. "Maybe, but those will be picked clean. A hospital might still have something." Marcus scoffed. "A hospital? Are you serious? That's probably the worst place to go." "We don't have a choice," Daniel shot back. "Samantha doesn't have time." Marcus shook his head, muttering, "We're wasting time on a lost cause." Daniel clenched his fists. "If you feel that way, then leave." Marcus looked up, a dark expression crossing his face. "Maybe I will." The words hung in the air like a knife between them. Before anything else could be said, a noise outside made everyone freeze. Footsteps. Not the stumbling, erratic movements of the infected, but something more deliberate. Someone was out there. The stranger. Daniel motioned for everyone to stay quiet as he crept toward a small crack in the door. A man in his 40s, wearing a backpack and a tactical vest, was scanning the area. He held a rifle, not some makeshift weapon, but an actual military-grade firearm. Daniel's grip on the pipe tightened. Was he friend or foe? The man turned slightly, revealing a radio clipped to his belt. He pressed a button. Still nothing. Checking another block. A voice crackled back. "Copy that. Keep moving." He wasn't alone. Marcus whispered, "We can take his stuff." Daniel shot him a glare. "We don't even know who he is." Marcus shrugged. "We can ask questions after we have the gun." Daniel ignored him. Violence couldn't be their first answer for everything. But before he could decide what to do, Samantha let out a weak groan. The man outside heard it. He spun toward the door, raising his rifle. "Who's in there?" he called out. "I know you're hiding." Silence. Daniel's heart pounded. They were trapped. The man took a cautious step forward. "I'm not looking for a fight," he said. "But if you don't answer, I'll assume you're infected." Daniel took a deep breath and made a choice. He slowly opened the door, raising his hands. "We're not infected." The man studied him carefully, his fingers still on the trigger. "How many of you?" Daniel hesitated. He could lie. But if this guy had backup, he'd find out anyway. "4," he said. "One of us is sick, but she hasn't turned." The man's eyes flicked past him, seeing Samantha through the crack in the door. His posture relaxed just slightly. "I'm Adam," he said. "You need medicine?" Daniel nodded. Adam sighed. "Hospitals are overrun, but there's a medical supply stash a few blocks from here. My group already hit it once, but there might be something left." Daniel glanced back at Olivia, then at Marcus. Marcus still looked ready to attack, but Olivia gave Daniel a desperate look. "Samantha needed this. Can you take us there?" Daniel asked. Adam studied him. Then he made his decision. "Yeah," he said. "But if you slow me down, I leave you behind." Into the city of death. The streets were a war zone. Burned-out cars, bodies littering the sidewalks, shattered windows. The infected moved in packs, some gnawing on the remains of the unfortunate, others wandering aimlessly, waiting for their next victim. Adam led them carefully, avoiding main roads, cutting through alleyways and ruined buildings. Daniel stayed close, pipe in hand, eyes scanning every shadow. But Marcus? He stayed behind them all. Watching. Thinking. Daniel knew Marcus wasn't done causing trouble. And he knew that, before this was over, he would have to make a choice about him. The pharmacy stood at the corner of a ruined street, its windows shattered, shelves ransacked, and blood splattered across the entrance. The sign above the door flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows against the walls. Adam crouched behind a rusted car, scanning the area through the scope of his rifle. "This place has already been hit," he muttered. "But if we're lucky, there's something left inside." Daniel tightened his grip on his pipe. Lucky. That was a joke. Nothing about this world screamed lucky anymore. Samantha groaned weakly on Olivia's shoulder, her fever worsening. She needed those meds. Now. Marcus leaned against the car, arms crossed. "So what's the plan? Walk in and hope we don't get eaten?" Adam shot him a sharp look. "We go in quiet. If there's infected, we take them out silently. If we make noise," he let the words hang, the unspoken consequences clear. Daniel nodded. "Let's move." The pharmacy of the dead. The group stepped carefully into the dark interior of the pharmacy. The air was thick with the stench of rot. The aisles were overturned, pill bottles scattered across the floor. Daniel led the way, sweeping his gaze from side to side, pipe raised. Adam moved like a professional, silent, controlled, his rifle trained on the shadows. Then they saw them. 3 infected crouched near the back, feasting on a half-eaten body. Their hands ripped into the flesh, their jaws working mechanically as they tore at muscle and sinew. Olivia gasped, too loud. The infected's head snapped up. One of them had no jaw, only a hanging tongue. Another was missing half its scalp, brain exposed. The third was still wearing a doctor's coat, though it was drenched in blood. They screeched and started moving. Daniel reacted first. He rushed forward, swinging the pipe. Crack, it connected with the jawless one's skull, sending it sprawling. Adam fired a suppressed shot, dropping the doctor zombie with a bullet to the forehead. Marcus grabbed a glass bottle from the floor and smashed it over the third one's head, then shoved it back into the shelves. The infected flailed, but before it could recover, Adam finished it with another silent shot. Silence. Daniel exhaled. That was close. Adam motioned toward the back room. "Medicine will be in there. Move." Desperate search for a cure. The back storage room was surprisingly intact. Metal shelves lined the walls, filled with medical supplies that looters had somehow missed. Olivia immediately started searching for antibiotics. "She needs something to fight the infection," she whispered, scanning the labels. Daniel dug through cabinets, pocketing painkillers, bandages, and anything useful. Marcus grabbed a bottle of water, drinking deeply before stuffing another into his backpack. Adam stood by the door, keeping watch. "Hurry up. We don't have." A loud crash cut him off. Something had knocked over a shelf in the front of the store. Then came the growls. Not just 1 or 2. A horde. Ambush. "We need to go. Now." Adam's voice was tight with urgency. Daniel stuffed a bottle of amoxicillin into his bag and turned. "Go where?" "They're blocking the front." Adam's eyes flicked to the back door. "That way." Marcus moved first, but the second he reached the door, bam, it burst open. A survivor stood there, gun raised, panting. His clothes were dirty, his face desperate. "Drop your shit," the man snarled. "Give me everything, or I swear I'll." The window behind him shattered. A zombie lunged, sinking its teeth into the man's shoulder. He screamed. The group jumped back as the man and the zombie crashed to the floor, thrashing wildly. Adam didn't hesitate, 1 shot to the head, and the man went still. More infected flooded in behind him. "No time." Daniel shouted. "Move. Run or die." They sprinted through the back door, racing down an alley as the horde poured into the pharmacy behind them. Samantha could barely keep up. Olivia held onto her, half dragging her forward. Adam turned and fired a few shots, but it was no use. The horde was massive. This way. Daniel spotted an abandoned delivery truck with its doors open. One by one, they jumped inside, slamming the door behind them. The infected pounded against the metal, their screams deafening. Inside the truck, breathing heavily, the group looked at each other. Samantha was barely conscious, but she was still alive, and they had the medicine. But Adam's face was grim. "We can't stay here," he said. "And if they don't leave soon, we're trapped." Daniel swallowed hard. The nightmare wasn't over yet. The pounding on the metal walls of the delivery truck was relentless. The moans of the infected filled the air, a chorus of death that sent shivers down Daniel's spine. Inside, the survivors sat in silence, breathing heavily, trying to ignore the reality outside. Samantha was barely conscious, her fever burning hotter than before. Olivia held her close, pressing the bottle of antibiotics against her trembling hands. "We have the medicine," she whispered. "She just needs time." Adam, still clutching his rifle, glanced around. "Time isn't something we have." The truck was surrounded. They were trapped. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, thinking. They couldn't stay here, but the second they opened those doors, the horde would tear them apart. Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "Great plan, guys. Now we're stuck in a tin can, waiting to die." Daniel shot him a glare. "We're not dead yet." Marcus shook his head. "Not yet. The only way out." Adam tapped a finger against the truck's side panel. "These things don't have the patience to stick around forever. If we stay quiet, they might wander off." "How long will that take?" Olivia asked. Adam didn't answer. He didn't need to. Too long. Daniel looked around, searching for anything they could use. Then he noticed something, a small hatch in the truck's roof. He pointed. "There. If we can climb onto the roof, we might be able to get away without them seeing us." Adam inspected it and nodded. "Could work. But where do we go from there?" Daniel swallowed. They'd figure that out later. First, they had to get out alive. Climbing into the unknown. Adam braced himself against the walls, pushing open the hatch. A gust of cold, night air rushed in. The sky was dark, only faintly illuminated by the fires burning across the city. Daniel climbed up first, poking his head out carefully. The street was crawling with zombies, their backs turned toward the truck as they clawed at the doors. Dozens of them. Maybe more. But above, on the rooftops, there was a way forward. Daniel pulled himself up, moving as quietly as possible. He gestured for the others. Adam followed, his rifle slung over his back. Then Olivia, struggling as she pushed Samantha up. Marcus was last. But as he climbed, his foot slipped. The metal clanged loudly. The horde reacts. The infected froze. Then, all at once, they turned. Their hollow, dead eyes locked onto Marcus, half hanging from the hatch. And then, they screamed. They surged toward the truck, slamming into it, their rotting hands reaching up. "Marcus, move!" Daniel hissed. Marcus scrambled up, rolling onto the roof just as zombie fingers brushed his foot. Below, the truck shook violently, the weight of the horde pushing it from side to side. "It's gonna tip!" Olivia cried. They had seconds. "Go, go, go!" Adam ordered. They sprinted across the rooftops, jumping from building to building. Every jump was a risk, one slip, and they'd fall into the sea of death below. Samantha barely held on to Olivia, her strength fading fast. Adam led the way, his military training keeping his movements precise. But Daniel wasn't watching Adam. He was watching Marcus, who was falling behind. And then, he saw the look in Marcus's eyes. It wasn't exhaustion. It was something else. The second betrayal. They reached a gap between two buildings, a wide one. Too wide for someone as weak as Samantha to jump. Daniel hesitated. We need to find another way. Adam wasn't listening. He jumped across, landing on the other side with ease. Olivia turned to Marcus. Help me with her. Marcus didn't move. Instead, he looked over the edge, at the horde still swarming below. Then, he stepped back. Daniel's eyes widened. Marcus. Don't. Marcus grabbed Olivia and shoved her forward. She stumbled, barely catching herself, but lost her grip on Samantha. Samantha fell to the ground, too weak to move. Marcus stood over her. Marcus, what the hell are you doing? Daniel ran toward him. Marcus pulled out his knife. Surviving. Before Daniel could stop him, Marcus grabbed Samantha and threw her off the roof. Olivia screamed. Samantha's body hit the pavement below. The horde swarmed her instantly. Her weak, fevered cries were drowned out by the sound of flesh being torn apart. Daniel froze in horror. Marcus turned to face him, his eyes cold. She was dead weight. Now we have a chance. Daniel's hands shook with rage. Adam had already jumped to the next rooftop. Olivia was sobbing. Marcus just stared at Daniel, daring him to do something. Daniel gritted his teeth. Not now. But soon. Marcus was not walking away from this. No more second chances. They had no time to mourn. The infected were still climbing. Daniel, shaking with fury, grabbed Olivia's arm and jumped. Marcus followed. Adam pulled Olivia up. Daniel ignored Marcus's outstretched hand, letting him climb up on his own. They ran. Away from the nightmare. Away from the sound of Samantha's final screams. But Daniel knew one thing for sure. Marcus had just made his last mistake. The rooftops stretched ahead, leading into the unknown. Behind them, the city burned, and the undead still swarmed below. But Daniel didn't care about any of that. Not anymore. His blood boiled, his heart pounded, his hands clenched into fists. Samantha was dead. Because of Marcus. And Marcus just kept moving, not even looking back. Like it was nothing. Olivia was still sobbing, her body shaking as she ran beside Daniel. Adam stayed ahead, scanning for a way out, but Daniel could barely hear anything over his own fury. This wasn't over. It wouldn't be over until Marcus paid for what he did. A temporary safe haven. They ran until their legs burned. The rooftops gave way to a construction site, half-built and abandoned. A skeletal framework of steel and concrete, stretching into the dark sky. Adam led them inside, clearing the way with his rifle. We rest here, he said. For now. Olivia collapsed onto a stack of wooden planks, silent, hollow-eyed. Daniel leaned against a pillar, staring at Marcus. Marcus met his gaze. Cold. Emotionless. Like he hadn't just thrown a friend to her death. I did what I had to do, Marcus said finally. Daniel snapped. Before Marcus could react, Daniel charged, slamming him against the metal railing of the scaffolding. You killed her. Daniel roared. You threw her to them like she was nothing. Marcus gritted his teeth, struggling, but Daniel was stronger. Fueled by rage. Grief. She was already dead, Marcus spat. We would have all died carrying her. Daniel slammed his fist into Marcus's face. Hard. Marcus stumbled back, spitting blood. You're gonna kill me over her? He let out a bitter laugh. In case you forgot, the world is already dead. People die every day. Daniel didn't hesitate. He swung again. And this time, Marcus fell backward, off the scaffolding. Marcus's last mistake. For a second, Daniel thought Marcus was going to die right there. But he didn't. Marcus landed on the floor below, groaning in pain. He wasn't dead, but he was hurt. Badly. And then. The growls started. Daniel froze. He looked down. Marcus was lying in the open, surrounded by shadows. The undead emerged from the darkness, drawn by the noise, by Marcus's weakness. Daniel. Olivia gasped. We have to. No, Daniel's voice was stone cold. Final. Marcus looked up at him. And for the first time, his confidence cracked. His eyes widened. Daniel. Don't. The horde fell on him. Marcus screamed. But Daniel didn't move. Didn't help. Didn't even blink. He just watched. Watched as Marcus was torn apart, piece by piece. Until there was nothing left. The final survivors. Silence. Only the crackling of fires, the distant moans of the undead. Daniel turned back to Olivia and Adam. Olivia was shaking, staring at him with wide, horrified eyes. Daniel, you let him die. Daniel exhaled slowly. No. I let justice happen. Adam didn't say anything. Just nodded. Because he understood. This was the world now. No mercy. No second chances. The road ahead. Morning came, painting the city in pale light. The horde had moved on. Daniel, Olivia, and Adam stood on the edge of the scaffolding, looking out over the ruins of the world. There was no safety. No civilization to return to. Only the road ahead. Daniel adjusted his backpack. We keep moving. Adam nodded. Olivia wiped away her last tear. And with that, they left the city behind. Walking toward the unknown. Survivors. But forever changed.